Hello, hello, and welcome to the Life Engineering Podcast. I am beyond excited for this episode and to have all of you here with Sharon Costanzo and myself to discuss such a beautiful and important topic, relationships. But Sharon has a unique spin. We already spoke at her podcast, right? Yes, Respected and Connected. We had an episode in which we spoke and we share how both of us see relationships from an engineering perspective, right? So, why don't you tell us more about you, Sharon, so everybody can hear and learn more about what you do with couples?
Working in utilities, it's a very male dominated, kind of authoritarian work environment. And there were just parts of it that never really sat well with me. It's so funny because I was reading this book and it was describing this about just women in general, how the corporate environment is not really designed well for us. But I started, from the very beginning of my career, I started thinking there's got to be something different out there for me. I worked at the utility company for 9 years. I had two kids pretty close together right at the end of that 9 years. And when I had my second child, I decided to quit working. It was very, very mixed emotions. I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom, but I had two kids really close to each other. I couldn't really see how I could do my career, especially as unhappy as I was in my career, and also be taking care of these two young kids. So I quit my job and I stayed home for about 15 months. And then I started looking for something. And I thought about consulting. I had some consultants that I had reached out to. And then I was like, what do I really love doing? And I started working at a math tutoring center. And I ended up very quickly running the math tutoring center for a few years. And I also knew at that point, this can't be my last, this can't be where I end up because my kids are going to be in school soon. I don't want to be working the opposite hours that they're home. What else could I do? So I started looking at what do I really enjoy? What do I love? What do I love about my math tutoring job? I love helping the parents and the kids feel more confident in themselves, develop their skills, just really do some of that problem solving work, but on a more personal level.
Mm.
And so I was like, I could be a coach. So I started working on building a coaching business. And it was interesting because you shared a similar story, so I start working with and communicating, doing some market interviews with women, thinking, oh, I'm going to help them. I grew up in an environment that didn't really promote women working outside of the home. So I have a lot of friends who are kind of navigating this for the first time. Like, what does it look like to be a working mom and manage everything at home while also being a career? So I started doing some of these market interviews, and these women were having the very same problem that had been like the biggest point of contention in my relationship, which was they weren't getting a lot of help at home from their spouse with childcare and housework and just all of the work that goes into running a household. And that seemed to be just a point of either contention or discomfort. I think I'm a little bit more outspoken than most women with my husband as far as what I want and what I expect. So it was definitely a point of friction and contention in our marriage. And I was kind of relaying this to my business coach at the time, like, I don't know what to do because, and I said these exact words. I said, pushing my husband to help more at home has almost ended my marriage. And the business coach said to me, she said, you said push.
What about attract?
Exactly. And I was like, "Oh, when we learn in marketing and sales and marketing and how to run a business, it's all about polling, right? It's all about the invitation and the word that you used, the attraction. It's all about painting a vision for what you want the relationship to be and inviting your partner to join you in that." And that was such a revelation to me because, up to this point, my husband and I had seen many couples therapists to try and work this out. And it always seemed like we would smooth things over, but never really get to the heart of the issue. And I felt like what a lot of couples therapists were suggesting to me was I just needed to be more grateful for what I had. Um, and kind of that this issue that I was having was not as big of a deal as I thought it was. One couples therapist even said to me, she said, "Well, women who feel more appreciated are less upset about the lack of help that they're getting." And I can't remember exactly how she framed it, but I was like, I don't want more appreciation. I want some actual help. Like, I can't be working 24/7 when my spouse is, having a lot of extra free leisure time in his schedule, and I'm not getting that. I just can't accept that that's going to be the next 20 or 30 years of my life of doing everything for everyone and not being able to rest and nourish myself.
I want to hear more about what was your breakthrough? I mean, you shared the epiphany you had
Yeah.
between the push and the attract or pull.
Mhm.
And I want to hear how you went about it later. I just want to create some suspense here.
Yeah.
But there were two things you mentioned that, or I'll relate to one of them. You said, um, I felt that my engineering job was not fulfilling. And then you ended up managing this math tutoring institute, which I could so relate, because when I knew I didn't want to be an engineer anymore, my immediate was, what else can I do with my life? I thought, I know nothing else, right? So we look
Mhm.
for whatever it is in our radar. And my immediate response was, well, I become a chemistry teacher, being a chemical engineer. So
Yeah.
I enroll at McGill, or English University here, to teach sciences in high school. Thank God that because I got pregnant with my second, I ended up not going that route. But so that's something interesting. But then you said, this cannot be it. And I just heard something extraordinary today about desire.
Mhm.
Desire is such a strong force. It's the strongest force we have. And
Yeah.
it's one that is ours. I can say that everything else that we receive is in my belief, from the Creator. But desire is ours, is our free will, right? Nobody can give it
Mhm.
to us. And here's the beauty in this. If you desire something, it's because it's already there and it's calling you. If it wouldn't be calling you, you wouldn't desire it. So when you were in that unfulfilling job as an engineer and you were not aligned, you didn't feel that sense of satisfaction that I'm sure you feel today working with couples.
Mhm.
Maybe you didn't know what the desire was yet, but you felt there was something else pulling you. And that something else that was pulling you was almost saying, hey, Sharon, here I am. I am your ideal job. It was already created for you. It's what you came here to
Mhm.
do, but you need to let go of what you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the kind of journey of a lifetime. And what I often tell people, because people do ask me often, like, well, how did you shift from engineering to
And the courage to do that.
like coaching and life coaching is kind of the broad definition of it, but how did you make that jump? And the thing that I tell them is, I grew up in a home with extremely practical parents. And so when I was going through my early teen years, I've thought about what I wanted to be when I grew up ever since I was a little kid. And, at first it was like, I want to be a dancer or a teacher or an artist. But by the time I was in those like early teen years, it was like, I want to help people. I want to be a therapist. I want to be a financial advisor. I want to be a math teacher. But all of those careers were kind of poo-pooed by my parents, especially my mom. So what won out at that point in my life was my desire to please my parents and to do something,
Safe.
remarkable in their eyes and safe. Exactly. Engineering is a very safe career.
That's right.
Um, being in the helping professions is a much more risky career move. And so it really was kind of that pull of um I want to help people in a different way. I got my bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering because I thought that would be the best way to merge both of those desires, but really the desire to help people in a more personal way is what really called me to working with people um, on some of those more personal struggles and personal desires. And then I think also, like you said, with desire, I love the way you said it, is I really desired what felt like a partnership marriage.
That's what I was going to say. Yes.
And what I think our culture at large pushes is more of this accommodating and dutiful marriage.
So, can you explain the difference between the
Yeah.
two?
So, I mean, you look at just what I see as kind of the typical model of a good marriage. And I think it's changing a lot. And I think especially as women are advocating for more partnership in the home, that things are changing. But I think there's a lot of tension and friction around this topic in our culture. But to me, a role-based marriage is very dutiful and accommodating. And that's kind of what I grew up seeing modeled. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she made sacrifices to be a stay-at-home mom. And I think that every relationship requires sacrifice, but she made a sacrifice that created a lot of resentment for her.
Mm.
My dad was a very hard worker. He did a really great job providing for our family, but he wasn't really very involved in the home. And I think he missed out on some of that relationship aspect of his life, and we missed out on that as kids because I didn't really have any sort of a meaningful relationship with my dad growing up. But my parents played their roles very well. They took care of their family. It was very clear whose responsibility it was to do what. But I think there was something missing in that. My parents, they had a very functional relationship, but it wasn't really a very intimate relationship. Everything works just fine as long as they played their roles well and didn't rock the boat. And
No, please go ahead.
yeah, I heard you kind of
Oh,
react
no,
to
no.
that.
I'm
But
thinking out loud. That's why, because everything
yeah,
you're saying is so powerful.
but I would see the thing that I think is so difficult, or a lot of couples get to this point where this role-based marriage isn't working when one person can't really fulfill that role anymore. I mean, this is a silly example, but because my mom was the homemaker in our home and fulfilled that typically feminine role in our home, like my dad didn't put food in the microwave and warm it up himself.
Hmm.
So it really, I mean, I think that women who do like become like so engrossed in family life. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it gets to a point for some women where they can't even leave and take a break. One of my neighbors was telling me, "Oh yeah, my sister, she can't even go out of town for the weekend because her husband calls her and says, I can't handle this. You need to come home." Um So we do need a little bit of flexibility in our roles in our family. I think that women are saying now, I I want to be a wife and a mother, but I also want to have a meaningful career. I don't just want to get like a weekend job cleaning offices to supplement the income of the family. I want to do something that's meaningful to me. And I need a partner to support me in order to do that.
That's right.
And I
And
think,
support doesn't mean agree, by the way.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Because I remember when I told my husband I want to become a coach, it's not he didn't agree. He agreed. He didn't believe in it, but he
Yeah.
supported me,
Yeah.
right? He
I
said, "Oh,
love
I
that.
don't need to believe in it. You need to believe in it. I'll support you."
Yeah. Like, yeah, I trust you. I trust that you know what you want, and I trust that what's good for you is good for our family.
That's right.
Um, and I
So,
think, yeah, go ahead.
is that what you're talking about when you finally found what you want to do in your life? Would that be the personal empowerment, but what you were lacking was to bring that empowerment into the relationship or the relational empowerment? What do you mean when you say, because I heard you say this and write about the transition from personal empowerment to relationship empowerment.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? That sounds
Yeah.
extremely
Well,
profound, but not, I think we can all benefit from learning more about that.
right. Yeah, I think that's the difference between the push and the pull.
Okay.
I really want to be in a partnership marriage. My husband and I grew up without a real vision of what a partnership marriage looked like because we grew up with very role-based examples.
Okay.
And for me to be the one to be kind of the visionary in the relationship and say, I want a partnership. Um, and before, I was doing all of that pushing, like I had decided this is the right way to do things. And you need to get on board. Otherwise, you're just another one of those lazy, entitled men that I have no interest in. That's maybe a little bit harsh way of saying it, but I did come across very critical and probably demanding. And I wasn't really understanding where my husband came from. And I think the shift to relational empowerment is being, very direct about what you want, but also considering, I think a magical question in relational empowerment is, what can I do for you to help you show up for me?
Wow. Wow. Can you say that again?
What can I do for you to help you show up for me?
That's that says a lot. I always say that the best thing you can do for your partner is teach them how to love you.
Exactly. And I think a lot of women growing up in this culture of female empowerment think I shouldn't have to teach my partner how to love me.
Oh,
They should already know.
that's very misleading.
Yeah, and so that's where I think there's kind of this conflict between personal empowerment and relational empowerment because it doesn't matter how much you read about relationships. I hear this I'm training with Terry Real in the relational life therapy program right now. And it's so interesting when you're a relationship expert like we study it a lot. We're still only the expert on how we want to be treated in a relationship.
That's right.
And our partner is the expert on how they want to be treated in a relationship. And no one can teach them what we want except for us. And the vice versa. Like we need, we need to be openly communicating about what we want. And we also, I think another big part of relational empowerment that's really important and useful is to think about and ask your partner, what do I do that makes it hard for you to show up for me?
Wow. Here's another wisdom nugget. What do I do that makes it hard for you to show up? Wow. That takes to be able to ask that question, you kind of need to be the bigger person. That's when you feel safe. You have to I think that that level of communication, which I believe belongs in the power couple
Oh, for
phase,
sure.
uh, it requires for you to really feel safe to open up to someone and let someone to be so vulnerable with someone, right? To trust that that person
Yeah.
won't use that against you, but
Yeah.
will use that to grow and to leap to the next level.
Hmm.
I love that question.
Yeah, and it's a hard question. I think it takes a lot of humility and courage to ask someone that and to be willing to accept that feedback and um yeah, without totally collapsing because we all are coming across in ways that maybe we don't fully understand. I think the thing that I've had to really learn and work on in my relationship, I grew up in a home that was pretty harsh and rigid and high standards and very high expectations, and I kind of got used to just taking feedback and it doesn't. My husband says I'm the only person he knows that like actually wants critical feedback. Um, but I had to learn that my husband wasn't wired that way. He didn't grow up that way. And the message that he was getting from me is nothing you ever do is good enough.
Yeah, which is probably the worst that a man can feel, because it makes them
Yeah.
feel they're not a man. Yes.
And so I had to learn how to, acknowledge the things that he was doing that I appreciated and, bring things up in a softer way and, understand that growth is really incremental and slow and messy and all of those things and just appreciate his willingness to even consider doing something differently than he had. That to me is a relational empowerment. Like, what am I doing that makes it so, I really want this for our relationship. I really think it is for the benefit of both of us. And I really need to face the ways that I make it hard for us to move forward.
I so love this because I strongly believe that there's a limit of how much you can grow and do your own healing, the healing you came to do in this life when you're alone.
Oh, for sure.
But then when you step into that um, empowerment or relational empowerment, that's when you actually not only are are facilitating for this relationship to become deeper and more connected and become that power couple, but also you are actually facilitating more growth for you, because this person is able to show you your blind spots and where is that you are not seeing, you are not showing up, you're making this hard for me. This is more healing that I can do on myself. So it's this relational empowerment is also it goes it's a feedback. It goes back to personal empowerment, because now
Oh,
I know
for
what I
sure.
need to work on myself. Because if you tell me, oh well, you want more help but you have a hard time receiving, let's say that's the feedback that you receive. I
Hmm.
think many times for strong women that's an issue, right? Then, oh okay, well I need to work on that. That has nothing to do with you.
Hmm.
And then bring it back to the relationship. So in a way, we are together for a reason and we are facilitating each other's growth, personal growth.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think your partner is the perfect mirror for what you need
That's
to
right.
work on. And it's so easy to think, oh, if they would just fix this one thing, then things would be so much better. And I definitely am guilty of falling into that trap. But it does always go back to what, what's my work here?
That's right. So what do you do when the woman is attempting to have this relational empowerment, but there's no recipient on the other side?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common dynamic for a lot of couples. I think a lot of men have kind of been raised to not really value relationships in the same way as women do, so they feel kind of dismissed or minimized or and I think that kind of goes back to the way that we view marriage traditionally, you know, if the man is fulfilling his duties, like I'm earning money and I'm not abusive,
Mm-hmm.
what else could there be? And I think for a lot of couples that are in that space, it's really helpful to get some sort of third party help to kind of really tease out the dynamics. I'm a huge fan of doing couples work with a therapist or a coach, because the therapist or the coach, the way I'm trained in relational life therapy, is really looking at that more distant, disengaged partner and figuring out what they want, which is often, I just want my spouse to be happy with me. But figuring out what they want and helping them to see, like, it's in your best interest to try a few things differently than you have been. And I think the power of a really great therapist or coach is to help that more disengaged person to see that it's in your best interest to be willing to grow a little bit in this area. Not only so that your spouse is happier with you, but so that you can experience some of those privileges of being in an intimate, meaningful relationship. And I think the reason why we struggle so much to do that without the help of a coach or therapist is because we're in this power struggle. And I, you know, I have women all the time, or they're like, I'm so frustrated because my husband will listen to you better than me. And I'm like,
Mm.
yes, that is so frustrating and it's so unfair. But let's work on it for a little while and help him to become more open to hearing from you, and help you to be more empowering in the way that you speak to them and invite them to, you know, kind of move forward in this vision that you're looking for. So I do think that there is a time when a couple gets stuck, and having somebody else kind of intervene and help kind of break up some of those friction points. But I think the very most important part is, until that person sees that it's in my best interest to do this, that they're seen, you know, without blame or judgment. Like, oh, I learned this somewhere. This learning, this way of being in this relationship isn't really working for me anymore. It's in my best interest to try something different. And I think they also need to be safe, feel safe to try and get it wrong.
Mm.
And that it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes and falter, and that you know, this is another kind of thing that catches all of us, I think, at some point or another, is we make a little bit of progress and then we fall back into an old pattern, and we tend to catastrophize that
That's
instead
right.
of realizing, like, oh, this is part of the process. It takes it doesn't take long to change a habit, but it does take a long time to kind of make it a way of being
Absolutely.
in your life. It's like learning a language. You know, you can learn a few key phrases to get you through a vacation, but before you start like dreaming in a different language, it will take you years of being immersed in that language for it to really become second nature.
Yeah, I've seen some of the couples that I work with that the moment something they get excited when things are moving forward. The moment something goes wrong, that's it. This is not working,
Right.
right? Or relating to the past, it never works. Well, but now
Mhm.
you're trying something new, so you want to start. You want to reset the counter now
Yeah.
and forget
Yeah.
about the past. I always give this analogy. If, God forbid, you were trying to heal a physical condition and you tried any possible way and it didn't work, and now somebody told you there's a doctor with a new medication, you're not going to go to the doctor and say nothing works. If you're going to try something new, you want to be resetting the counter and give it all and come from a place of, okay,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah. I think sometimes we get, that story becomes so embedded into us that story of it doesn't even matter, nothing works, that our brain subconsciously has to prove that
Protect.
we're right.
Yeah, to prove we're right, to protect ourselves, the fear of failure, after all. So that's
Yeah.
really protecting us from the fear that it won't work, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Wow. So so much wisdom in what you're sharing, shifting from personal empowerment to relational empowerment, and how we all know about the power of words. And from what I'm hearing from you is, am I using my words to create more separation, or am I using my words to create unity?
Right.
And those key phrases that or questions that you share with us today are, they feel like their intention is to create unity, not separation. How can we do this together
Right.
and take share responsibility?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other part is we have to really see each other as equals.
Yes.
And I think the kind of traditional old school way of looking at relationships is that there's always a hierarchy in the relationship. Women are the experts on relationships, men are the experts on
Providing.
whatever, providing, but really we have to look at each other as equals and um, value each other's perspectives as much as we value our own.
That's right. That's right. Seeing ourselves as a team. We are in this together. You
Yep.
win, we all win. You lose, we all lose.
Yep.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Just trying to wrap up and even get in my head, everything you just shared, it was so powerful. If you had to leave our audience with your last message, whether it is leave them with a question or a tip that they can implement, what would you like to share with our audience?
That's a great question. I think in order to move into this kind of relational empowerment position in the relationship, you really do have to kind of let go of, excuse me, let go of some of the ways of being that maybe you've been in before. And the thing that's so hard about this, and Terry Real, my mentor, he talks about this often, like you have to let go of some of the attachments that you have to the people who taught you that way
Mm,
of being. And it's like a grieving process. It has been for me. Like, oh, I can't be like a collaborative partner and a resentful wife at the same time.
wow.
And um and I
but, but,
have to
but just there, what you just said, right? It's, do I want to be a resentful wife, or do I want to be how did you say,
I
collaborative
said
partner?
collaborative partner.
Yeah, just being in that choice. It's
Yeah, and
very
I
important.
I think women, so much in this like women's empowerment movement, and I think that women's empowerment is so important. But I think it to the point that it's turning women into kind of these resentful, harsh people, then it's not adding value to our relationships. But I think relational empowerment is the key to feeling really strong and empowered as a person without devaluing our relationships in the process.
Without overcorrection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's
Thank
so
you,
great
Sharon.
to chat with you.
This was, it was beautiful. It was empowering, insightful. Where can people learn more about you and the work you do with couples?
Yeah, so I do have a podcast. It's called Respected and Connected. We will be going on a brief break for the next few months, but there's still, over 150 episodes that you can listen to. And then I do have my main website, Respected and Connected. But if you want to kind of see like what's the most current stuff going on, then you can go to respectedandconnected.com/links. I've got a women's community that's going to be starting up in the next month or two. I teach couples courses. They're in person right now, but we'll have something virtually happening fairly soon too. So there's just lots of different things going on. I do also work individually with couples and with individuals. So if you're interested in that, you can find that on my website as well.
Thank you so much. I have to tell you, I knew the name of your podcast and website, but only now I understand it. Now, when you said, I'll tell you the way I perceive it. Respect means it's that personal empowerment, and connected is that relational empowerment.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think, women would come to me so often, and I felt this also. I didn't feel respected in my relationship. I didn't feel valued as a person. And part of it was me having to learn how to value myself. And it is kind of like, how do we value ourselves and feel valued in the relationship while also feeling that sense of collaboration and connection? So
I love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sharon. And thank you to our listeners for being here. Don't forget to please share this episode with a friend, with any friend that is in a relationship or wants to be in a relationship, and subscribe to our podcast so you can be updated with new episodes. Thank you, everyone, and have a beautiful, beautiful day.